I'm an investor for since 2010. I started with a single family home on Hamilton Mountain back when prices were like 240 grand. That was my first property. I remember putting 5% down, and I was just before my 25th birthday. I'm telling you because I want to share with you, how far we've come. And I remember doing the math in my head. I'm like, okay, 240, 5%. Okay, I need 12 grand. And then at closing, my lawyer called me and said, hey, you're short money. And I'm like, no, Jerry, what are you talking about? 12 grand, 5%. And he's like, no, Paul, there's closing costs. Like, that's how stupid and young I was. So I had to go. I was living in my grandparents' house at the time. I went into my mom's closet, and we're Italian. She had one of those the half Damigiano, like the 20-liter bottles for they use for wine. It was filled with pennies. So I smashed it and I rolled all the pennies, and that was one of the ways I, I raised the land transfer tax and lawyer fees and everything. So, nowadays we're doing developments, and I'm building multiple apartment buildings at the same time. And we're releasing 63 townhouses for residential development in Welland. I have multiple rentals, lots of multifamily, some student rentals. I have Airbnbs internationally. Um, lots of stuff going on. And, on top of all that, I coach and mentor a lot of investors also. Uh, we're realtors, but we only really practice, within that whole investor space. 95% of my clients are investors, and, we do all kinds of stuff, apartment buildings, residential, duplexes, student rentals. And it's turned into more of an advisory business because, I mean, Joanne can tell you, like, I think I saw a meme on Instagram, and I don't know, I hope it's not true, but there's like more realtors in Ontario than active military service personnel in Canada. So there's no shortage of realtors out there. So what I find is the good ones, especially who deal with investors, you end up being more of an advisor than you are someone who can transact, because people want to work with other people who have been, down the road before, and they can share some experience with you rather than someone with a license you can get in 4 months or whatever it is. So that's kind of where we're at and what we do. And I do a lot of these presentations for my own group of people, and Joanne asked me to do this, and that's where we're at. So I'll run through this, and I guess we can do questions at the end. Uh, so let me just share again. And can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. I
Perfectly.
see thumbs up over there. All right. So I'm not a lawyer, obviously. If there's any lawyers on here, you can stop me anytime. But I'll share my perspective on the whole partnership thing is purely from an investor's perspective and from someone who's coaching a lot of investors through these things, through a number of deals and transactions. Okay. So first things first. Uh, Partnerships help get people into deals faster, but they multiply risk. So nowadays in my own investing, like I'm pretty I'm very picky about who I partner with because I've done so many of these before. And sometimes, like even if I could get a partner and raise the money, I just want to do it on my own. And other times I'll take a partner because partnerships add an element of work and risk to a deal that's not always worth it. So, like without sounding weird, like when you take a partner on a deal, especially a bigger deal like a development or a large apartment building, like you're essentially financially marrying this person. So, I think you should choose your partners as closely as you would choose your husband or wife, right? I think the biggest problems that I've seen that start in partnerships, the obvious ones come from not having an agreement in the first place, a joint venture agreement or a partnership agreement or a corporate agreement. That stuff comes back to bite you in the rear end. I've been there before. I've done partnerships that are just handshake type deals. And, a lot of times they've worked out and sometimes they haven't. So I'll share some stories with those. Inside the agreements that I do now, uh, they're very scenario based. So I'm not sure if accountants do this. I know lawyers do. So it's a case of if this happens, this is how we solve it. Choice one, two, three. So I'll give you a weird one you might not have thought of before. Let's say you have a partnership and it's you two guys, me and one of my friends, or me and a partner I raised money from. We might put a clause in there that says, what happens if one of us gets divorced? And now that's immaterial to the deal, but it does can affect the assets and the shares in the assets, especially if it's much larger. And instead of saying, well, this is going to happen, we like to put in I like to put in the agreement, these are three options we can pursue. There's this option, there's that option, and if none of those work, we both mutually agree to approach a lawyer and have the lawyer sort of mediate the situation and come to a conclusion. I rarely, I don't want to have situations end up in deadlocks or end up in black holes. So that's really important that when you do draft an agreement, that in my view, in order to eliminate the problems, that you make it scenario based. Okay. And hey, listen, if it's just a single family home or a duplex, I mean, how many scenarios could there possibly be? I mean, you could spend, 3 months writing up an agreement. Your lawyer, whoever helps you draft the agreement, or a coach, an advisor, whoever, excuse me, they should be able to give you some common, obstacles that they see with the type of investment. And then that'll help you kind of get things drafted. Okay. Let me go on to the next slide here. So it took me a while to get this slide right, but I wanted to really get the idea across to you. And it's that these partnerships, the ones, and I've been there myself, the ones that start out with people who are, I would say, typically junior investors, they start out with the same goal, right? So if me and Joanne were gonna do a joint venture and we were both, newer beginner, we both want to make money. We both want to increase the size of our portfolio. We both want to make more cash flow and more equity. So we have a similar goal, and that might bring us together. But we might have different expectations that we're not communicating. So where roles are not clearly defined, and I've seen this so many times. So when let's say Joanne has the deal, she might say to me, "Paul, I had this amazing deal. I'm going to handle the deal. I'm the realtor. I'll do the transaction, and I need you to bring some cash to the table and qualify for financing, and then we're good to go." I say, "Wow, well, this is an amazing deal. Happy to do that." But we haven't defined yet who's going to manage the property afterward. And maybe she says, "Well, I'll manage the property afterward." But he didn't define who's actually going to manage it. Is Joanne going to hire a property manager? So if we weren't clear, I might assume Joanne's going to manage it for free. And then Joanne's like, "Well, I didn't mean that. I'm not going to go there and collect rent. I'm going to hire ABC Property Management." And I'm going to say, "Well, that takes away from my cash flow." And we're going to butt heads after the deal's closed. So you see what happens. Same goal, different expectations. And with money, it's obviously this is the big one, right? What happens after 5 years? Let's say I qualify for a 5-year term, a variable or fixed, whatever. We go for 5 years, and we don't say in the agreement after 5 years we get the option to either sell or refinance or whatever we decide to do. But now I want to sell and she doesn't, or vice versa, or she wants to refi and I don't, or something, right? Again, it's that scenario base. What happens? Here's a good one. What happens to the cash flow? This is such a junior one. The property cash flow is $1,000 a month, right? So 12,000 a year. We should get 6,000 a year each in cash flow, right? Well, no. What about the roof? Shouldn't I leave money in the account in case the roof leaks or the furnace breaks? What am I going to do? Just rip out $12,000 and bring the account to zero? Like, that's crazy. We have to agree how much money we're going to leave in the account. So imagine doing that afterward. You're like, I want my $500 a month. And Joanne's like, no, you got to leave money in the account. I'm like, you didn't tell me that. And then we're butting heads again, right? And dispute resolution. I kind of talked about this scenario base. Like, hey, if we get to a place where we're butting heads and it's a black hole, there's no clear decision, how do we mediate this? Do we say our prayers? Do we go outside and me and Joanne fight and see who wins? Do we call a lawyer? Do we arm wrestle? Like, how do you mediate the dispute? So you got to have a clear framework for that so that when and if they're bigger deals, inevitably when they come up, right, you have an easy way to fix it. Now, why is it important? A, you want to save yourself a pain in the ass, right? Like the rest of our lives and people and tenants and dealing with the government's enough of a pain in the ass. You want to be friends with your partner. I would think so. And imagine if you build a good relationship with your partner, you're probably going to want to do more deals together. It's probably better for both of you. And if you're the one raising capital, which I hope you are, and you make your partner happy, well, guess what they're going to do? They're just going to give you more money. And I'll tell you a little secret. If you get into the business of raising money, it's one of the best skills you could have because a you can be a really good investor and you can be really shitty at raising money. They're two different skills. And you can be really good at raising money and a terrible investor, aka Bernie Madoff, right? If you're both of those, if you're good at both, you're essentially a god of real estate. You're untouchable. You can raise your own money, you can do your own deals. People are gonna follow you everywhere you go, right? So it's a really important skill. And if you don't, in the raising money world, your best marketing and your best way to raise money is for me to make Joanne happy. So she gives me more of her money and she refers me more of her friends. She sends me Leo and Glenn and whoever, right? So this stuff, although it seems like crazy, it's not particularly important to getting this specific deal you're doing done on the duplex. It has a lot of weight if you plan on being a bigger investor. I hope that's clear. Okay. This is a big one for me. So being friends is not a governance structure. So I've done a bunch of these joint ventures where it's me and a buddy I know, and we're like, yo, you put up 50, 100 grand, I'll put 100 grand, we'll figure it out later. And a lot of that stuff works, but until it doesn't, right? The cheesy analogy I use, and I'm full of cheesy analogies, I'm sorry, is like I'm sure some or all of, or most of you have kids. Would you send your kid out to ride their bike without their helmet? Probably not, right? 99.9 times out of 100, they're going to be fine. But why risk the point one? Like, the risk is terrible. Like you're talking about life-altering decisions here. It's not that difficult to put a helmet on. We're not asking you to be a rocket science. And it's the same analogy for your joint venture agreement. Like it's a little bit of extra work, and yeah, it's an extra $500 or $1,000 to your lawyer to do a review, but then you're safe. You're covered. You got your helmet on. Like, why? I've seen friendships blown up over stupid deals. Like, for what purpose? You get in your car. I'm bad. I'm bad like this. I forget to put my seatbelt on all the time. But so the risk reward thing is the same in both analogies. Small little bit of work, huge amount of ROI, right? So, and I would think that if you have maybe this more from a man's perspective, but if you have respect for your friend, you'll do the agreement. because I think you're showing your friend that, hey, I respect our friendship and I value our friendship more than I value this deal. I'd rather kick the deal to the curb than lose a friend like Glenn, right? So even if they say, "No, Paul, I know you're 20 years. What are you talking about? We trust each other already. Blah blah blah. Our kids play." No, no, no. We need to do an agreement because that's the professional way to go. Okay. Um, uh, do I have any? Yeah, I do have stories about this. So um, I had one, and we still have a partnership ongoing, and it's been 12 years. So, but here's the thing that everybody forgets, and I didn't even know until it happened, is that over a span of 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, God knows, maybe longer, it's not that people change, it's people evolve, right? The same person, I'm still the same person I was 10 years ago, but I've evolved and I have different needs, I have different knowledge, I have different wisdom, I have different preferences. So the person you partnered with 10 years ago may not have the same needs and wants anymore. And if he was okay selling at 10 years back then, and he said that and you shook hands on it, but he's not now, well, that's the part nobody can account for, right? So you got to have that paper there that keeps everybody honest because you don't want friendships to blow up over silly things like that. Okay, let me move on. Oh, well, I kind of just went into the story. You know, our priorities changed. That was the big one that I missed. So in the end, the lesson was we had to essentially restructure the entire partnership. There were certain assets we had to sell. There were certain assets we kept. And believe it or not, there were certain assets we had to split up so that he could do what he wanted with his asset and I could do what I wanted with my asset. It was the only way. And uh, to be honest with you, would the JV agreement have covered every scenario that we had to deal with? No, it wouldn't have, especially if we had done one back when we first started. We didn't know what we were doing anyway. But it would have covered 50% of it. It was something. So an extra 500 bucks 10 or 12 years ago would have saved us 50% of the pain. And we could have focused on the important stuff. In the end, the ROI of not the properties and the investments, but the ROI of the partnership was tremendous because we helped each other do four times the work. There was synergy. One plus one wasn't two. One plus one equaled four in this partnership because we had each other's back and we were able to grow more than we would have alone. So it worked out. It's just people change. And we're still friends because luckily for both of us, we both respected the friendships. But again, I don't want to see any of you go through that, especially with friends or family. Oh my God, I'm not even going to talk about family. Okay. So nowadays, I don't make a JV agreement optional. It's a condition of my partnering with you, or you partnering with me, or me entering a deal. In fact, uh, like sometimes I'll even do a memorandum of understanding, an MOU. What is that? It's almost like a letter saying that this is what I understand. This is like a pre JV agreement. This is what I understand about the deal. This is what I understand my role to be. And this is how it's going to shake out. And you just put things in words and on paper. And is it necessary? No. But you know what it prevents? It prevents the he said, she said. Oh, I thought you said you were going to do this part. And I'm like, no, no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this. But if I had the memorandum of understanding, like, hey, look, remember I said it, but I actually put it on paper, right? So if it's a bit delicate and I don't know everyone involved, then I kind of do that to avoid the he said, she said stuff. Okay. And we have our I don't know if you guys do this or not, but we have our joint venture agreements. Like obviously I have my own files with my own JV agreements. I'm not the best paperwork person in the world, but I actually have my JV agreements filed with my lawyer. So the lawyer who closed the deal, we keep the JV agreement on file so that inevitably when I lose paperwork, that's why I have an assistant, we can just go, hey, Mr. Lawyer, we need we need that JV agreement again. Okay. And I treat the JV agreement on a larger development deal where there's, say, multiple seven figures involved. I treat the JV as part of the due diligence agreement. So part of doing due diligence on the actual deal itself is doing due diligence on the people and the partners involved. So if I can't get what I want or what I need or what I think I need to do the deal successfully out of the partnership, if I can't get the pieces of the partnership set in stone the way I think it should be, then I don't even want to be part of the deal. The partnership at that point is more important than the deal itself because no partnership, no deal. I'm out. And when you have limited time and your funds have to go, you have to be careful where you put them. It's just part of what you do. And I know this is obvious, but it's all part of the equation here. Obviously, it creates clarity before any conflict and it protects both parties, right? But the point is not optional. Oops, did I go too far? Yes, I did. Huh. Oh, I gave you these examples already. So, yeah, the cost. There was an example I have in here. Let me check my notes. Okay, we covered this part with my analogy and story. Let me move on. Okay, so here's the basics that I think for a very small basic deal you need. So assume a duplex, triplex, fourplex, anything basic like that. Where is the money coming from and how much? Who is going to be the one to actually qualify for financing, sign the papers, and put themselves at risk there with the lender? Okay. And who is the one managing the asset? Who's going to manage the property directly? Is it you or is it a property manager? And who's going to manage the manager? If you can figure out that stuff, it solves a lot of the problems that I see you run into beforehand. Okay. And before closing, at the very least, you need to know how much cash you want to leave in reserve in the account all the time, because that's a common kind of headbutting situation, 2,000, 5,000, 3 months rent, whatever it is. And you want to determine, what happens at 5 years or at 3 years, or when do we reevaluate this investment? And what happens at refinance, at sale? What realtor should we call? Who is the list of realtors, right? You're never going to cover 100% of everything, but if you can get these questions, if you can get these questions answered, these questions will lead you to more questions and more questions, and it'll give you the framework for what you need out of the JV agreement. Then you take those answers and questions, you give it to the lawyer, and you should be good to go. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. I was gonna say with the lawyer. So if you don't have a JV agreement already, you should. But if you're getting your first one, the first one's kind of expensive, but the first one will give you a template. But once you have a JV agreement, you can just reuse the same one over and over again. And if your lawyer's trying to charge you two or three times to use the same agreement, you got to say, hey, bro, like, I'll give you the answers. You just draft it, right? Because, they try sometimes. So that first agreement, that's your template, and you can use that going forward every time. You just obviously change the names, and you might have to change little terms, equity terms, and depending on the deal you're actually doing. But to get that template, that's really valuable, and you want to move forward from there. And now, to be honest with you, AI can help you do a lot of it. I just, with 30 minutes, if you know how to prompt the AI and ask the right questions, you'll draft a legal worthy JV agreement very, very quickly. And your lawyer can just double check and sign off, to be honest with you. Uh, let's keep going there. So I'll just talk about uh, three clauses out of God knows how many there are, just for the sake of our presentation here. So capital call. So what's a capital call? So let's say you got 3,000 as a minimum buffer in your bank account, but there's a big repair, there's a flood, it's going to cost 10 G's. You only got three. There's a $7,000 cash call. How are you going to handle it? Are me and Joanne going to put 3,500 each? Shouldn't we put 5,000 each to replenish the account to 3,000? Like, uh, uh, maybe it was Joanne's responsibility to manage the property, and the tenant was complaining for 6 months about a leak, and she did nothing about it. She didn't tell the property manager what to do. And now there's an even bigger leak. I might say, hey, Joanne, what's up? You're supposed to be responsible for that. Why don't you put the money up? How does that work? Right? So this capital call one is a big one. Even if I felt Joanne was responsible, inside the JV agreement, it might say any capital call of that nature, we're supposed to put 50-50. I'm going to be upset. I might have to have a conversation with Joanne. But if she doesn't agree, what am I going to do? The agreement set it in stone. I'd have to sue her or something. But how am I going to? It's like suing myself. It's ridiculous, right? So you got to be careful here with these capital calls, and again, make it scenario based. Because if someone's going to be responsible for the property, they have to take on that responsibility and uh, uh, be honorable about it. If you fail at your job, you kind of should own it. Just like if I qualify for the financing, but I don't make the mortgage payments, right? Or that they need paperwork from me, I don't give it to them. It's ridiculous. I got to be responsible. So the dispute resolution, we talked about this a few times already. It's just when situations like I just described come up, what's the method that we use to resolve it? So in that situation where I think Joanne should be responsible for the repair because she was negligent, right? And we both don't agree, how do we resolve that? You know, do we contact an agreed upon lawyer to sort of mediate that? Is there another way? I don't even know. I'm off the top of my head. I can't think about it. I don't have a direct answer, but you should in the agreement. Okay. And shotgun clause, never had to use it, but it works because it keeps people honest. So a shotgun clause, I'll give you an example here. Let's say there's a situation where me and Leo own a property, and 5 years comes up, and I want to sell it, yeah, I want to sell it, and I think it's worth 600,000, right? Well, we might have a clause in there that says if Leo doesn't want to sell it, that he gets the opportunity to buy me out. But if I'm adamant that the value is 600,000, well, he gets to buy it off me for 600,000. I can't just If I want to sell it and he doesn't, and he's like, well, I'll buy it off you. And then I say, well, now I want 700,000. Well, I can't do that. That's the shotgun clause. If I'm going to come up with a number, I got to be willing to take it too, and vice versa. So that keeps people honest. And there's a few different variations on the shotgun clause, and you can use it to keep people honest. Okay, very quickly in a JV agreement, and I like that one. Never had to use it though. Uh, Reserves. Oh, capital calls. Yes, we talked about this, right? I'll give you an example. We had a flood at one of our properties that came in from the roof somehow, and, destroyed two units. And then we had to relocate the tenants of both of those units, and then insurance refused to cover us. So we had to go back and sue the insurance company. Now there's a massive capital call. Now, luckily, we had the money in the bank account to cover all this. But if we didn't, holy crap, would that have been a situation, right? Would that have been the situation? And it wasn't just the repairs, it was the carrying costs. We had to pay, I paid one tenant 4 grand plus first and last month's rent at their new place. And we had to pay another tenant 12 grand. Not that I wanted to, but they refused to leave. And the place was moldy and stinky. And we're like, guys, like, what are you doing? Like, and we were afraid they were going to call the city. And if they called the city, it was going to be like so much worse. So for me, it was the best 12 grand ever. I'm like, yeah, okay, just get out. Just go. Sign the agreement, you're out. Right? So imagine we didn't have the money. Oh my God. Oh my God. So here's a situation. Me and Joanne are partners. This is exact situations happen. There's 10 grand in the account, but we need 50 grand. So we got to put in 50 grand. What if I don't have the money? What happens? We just give up and quit and walk away. What if Joanne has to put all the money in? How does that work? Maybe Joanne, for her extra 25K, buys 25K of the property from me until I can pay her back, right? So I'm telling you, when you start thinking about scenarios, like you can go off the deep end, but it's important because this stuff, I swear to God, this stuff happens. So a good JV agreement is going to protect you there. So beyond active dispute resolution, because you're never going to think about everything, communication is really important. So back to my previous example when I, obviously made this up when Joanne was negligent about the property management and it cost us the flood in the basement. Maybe we don't need to have a mediation. Maybe I can go see Joanne, I make her an espresso and I say, hey, look, let's sort this out like adults. You know, this is what happened. This is how I feel. This is where I feel like you should have been responsible. This is where maybe I was responsible. Maybe I should have called you and been like, hey, you got to do this right now. Maybe I should have just left it to you and not thought about it. Maybe we agree that she's going to cover the repairs 75/25 and we move on. That's a hell of a lot cheaper than calling a lawyer, isn't it? Right? So in the end, communication is like, I mean, I'm a salesman and Joanne's a sales lady. She knows like communication is like super, super important with anything you do. I'm learning. By the way, I live with 4 women. I got 3 daughters and a wife. So I'm becoming an expert in how to communicate without throwing stuff and breaking things, right? Uh, uh, but it can really help if you're raising capital. Typically, if you're the one raising capital, most often you're raising capital from someone who's less experienced than you in the real estate game, at least. So they're going to have a lot of, they're going to have more emotions than you because they're less experienced. So if you don't know how to communicate around those emotions, you're in big trouble. You're going to hate raising money. You're going to be like, why did I should have just bought this property myself. And you're going to stay narrow. I don't want any more. I don't want to deal with, you've heard it before. If you deal with other investors, if you go to any investor meetups, you'll hear some people say, I'm never having taking a partner ever again because they had one bad experience. So your ability to communicate and solve problems, uh, not only does it help resolve stuff, but it just makes you so much more powerful when it comes to raising the capital also, which is another conversation altogether, right? Oh, we talked about the shotgun clause. Yeah. So this is how it works. One person wants to sell, the other wants to hold. If the guy who wants to sell calls out a certain price, then he's got to stick to it. He can't change it afterward. Okay. It's a good solution, but it's not always uh, the best one because it can leave people a little bit bitter. So if you're in the business of raising capital, the last thing you want to do is leave people with a bitter taste in your mouth, right? So it's a tool in the toolbox. Let's put it that way. All right, here's a good one. Let's say Glenn and I do a JV agreement, and I put up the money, and I say, Glenn, I like this deal. I like you. I trust you, but I'm not sure. I might need the money in the next 2 or 3 years. And Glenn says, well, this is real estate. We're not buying stocks. Like you got to be able to commit for at least 5 years. Like this is how it works in real estate. And I say, yeah, I like the deal, but I want to have access to my money just in case. So we had this deal with an older gentleman who was, in his 60s. He's like, yeah, I like the deal, but I want an early exit if I want to. And we came up with a solution. It was an early exit penalty, but it would decline with time. So, for example, we did the deal and we said, listen, in the first year, if you want to exit in the first 12 months, which is insane, there's a 50% penalty on your equity. In year two, 40%. In year three, 30%. In year four, 20%. Before year five, like within the 12 months before year five, 10%. After 5%, 50-50 or whatever our JV agreement was, right? That was a way to get the deal done and give the investor who was raising capital a compromise. I mean, if he would have tried to kill the deal in the first 12 months or exit the deal in the first 12 months, we would have bought him out, but we would have bought him out with 50% less. I mean, sounds insane, but half of me is like, I kind of hope he wants out of the deal because I'd be getting a good deal, right? But no, he didn't. He stayed the course. But to him, this was security. And I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone, but when you're raising capital, like it's not exactly easy when you're starting out. So if you got somebody with money and everyone's going to have obstacles, emotional or logical and both. You got to think outside the box when you're trying to get these deals done. And this is a way we did it in a JV agreement. We ended up doing, was it 2 or 3 properties with this guy? So it worked out well. Okay. So on selecting a partner, we're going to financially marry, right? My view is you should be solving a problem for each other. Like if I'm a go-getter and I'm raising capital and I'm doing deals and I meet Leo at an event and he's a go-getter and he's raising capital and he's doing deals, we might shake hands and be friends, but are we going to do a JV together? Like we're kind of not solving each other's problem at that point if he's doing the same job I am. If I'm in that position, I need someone the opposite who maybe doesn't have time but wants to invest and has capital and the ability to finance. And now we're congruent. We're solving a problem for each other. And even though you may not be congruent on a social level, you might not even be friends with the person. But if you're helping solve financial problems for each other, that's just a way for you to be partners on that side, right? So that congruency is where the due diligence part comes in. Like you really need to know the person. Again, you're financially marrying him or her, and you got to be. It's got to make sense, right? Or else it's just trouble. Can you imagine if both people? I had this once. It was two ladies, and they're like, we're going to invest together, and we're going to put half the money and do half the financing, and do half the property management each, and half. And I'm like, well, that's a great idea, but like, you guys are going to hate each other in like 3 months. Like, you're going to bump heads. One person's going to want to paint the room red, the other one's going to want to paint the person blue, and that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think you should just take one job and you take the other job and stay out of each other's lane and hold each other accountable and responsible. And that's the best way to do it, right? Can you imagine the tenant? Like you give the tenant two emails. I'm going to give the tenant my email and Joanne's email. And then the tenant reaches out to both of us and we're both competing to fix her dryer. Like, what? Ridiculous. Okay. So be congruent. Again, it'll solve problems before they start. Oh, yes. Uh, Believe it or not, I've been on both ends of JV deals. I've been the money partner. So when I first started learning land development stuff in like 2018, I was the one who brought the money. I brought the capital, I brought the financing, and I was able to bring the sales stuff too. And it fit well because I didn't have the time. I live in Oakville, and the development I was doing was in St. Catharines. Like I don't have time to go there and deal with contractors. Are you kidding me? And it wouldn't make financial sense anyway. The time I spend doing there, I'm going to lose 10 sales throughout the year and two other deals that I'm doing. Like for what? I'm going to lose 300,000 to save 100 grand. Is ridiculous. So it was a perfect scenario. The builder dealt with all the approvals, the site plan approval, the severance, the building permits, obviously the building part, the occupancy agreements, and then I took over with the sales. And it's a great fit. So you don't always have to be on one side, right? Great learning experience too. I would never have learned the development stuff if I didn't be the money partner and sort of take the, college 101 course and watch what he was doing. And then trust. I think we're getting close to the end. And I think I've said this, great partners become your best referrals. They really do. You want to always under promise and over deliver, especially with ROIs and stuff. Never promise too much. Okay. Because I'll tell you a secret, when you're raising capital, most of the time, it's not about the actual deal. It's about you. No one's going to do a deal with me if the deal is good, but they don't trust me. They might do a deal if they trust me when the deal's, it's okay. But never if they don't. If you can't bring trust, you're done. You're finished. So trust comes in a lot of forms, comes in experience, comes with communication, right? It comes to how you show up, uh, everything you do, right? And when you're in the deal, not only do you have to maintain your expectations from a return perspective, but if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. And it's just part of business, never mind trust and integrity, because you want those referrals back. Yes, I think this is just a fancy things we already talked about. Congruency, clear expectations, strong communication, professional agreements. That's the pillars that this whole thing is kind of built on. And we could teach a class for an entire weekend, but if you get those things, then you're really getting the base together. Okay? And I think that's it. Yep. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to sit here and answer them or
Thank you very much, Paul. That was a great presentation. And yeah, if anybody has any questions,
yeah, feel free. Otherwise,
that really cleared up. That really makes a lot of sense because I've looked at doing a JV with someone, but the market just wasn't the right time. But never thought about who does what, right? Because like my background is property management, but we were both going to raise the capital. And but that was really that really was eye opener for me, an eye opener. Just
Yeah.
figure out who does what. Like bring someone that has different set of skills that you don't have.
Well, I think if you, at least in my experience, if you're moving up in the whole real estate investment world and you're doing bigger and bigger deals, partnerships are an inevitability. Like you have no choice.
Yeah.
So you got to learn it one way or the other, right? So I
Mhm.
hope you guys took value from that. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah.
If you have any questions afterward, you can shoot me an email or talk to Joanne, whatever you want, and go
I
from
think
there.
Frank had his hand up. Frank, you're on.
Yeah. Hi. I have a question. Um,
Hi, Frank.
Hi. You mentioned earlier about uh, prepare the proper prompts to use AI and let AI put something together that you can learn from, at least more preparation before you sit in front of a lawyer, so that you know what you're asking, you know what you're looking for. But preparing those prompts, I mean, where would I go? How could I get some terminology for each of the categories and that you spoke of?
Yeah, I don't have like specific prompts, so I might not be as refined with AI as I'm letting on, but the way I do it is I literally have a conversation with the machine. It's scary as hell. So for example, I'll say something like, I need to draft a joint venture agreement for a real estate deal that I've raised money for in the province of Ontario. Please follow Ontario law. The details of the deal are this. Frank is my partner. He's going to put up 200,000 and qualify for the financing. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. What clauses should I have in there that are going to protect Frank and protect me? And tell me why. And it just let it go. But that doesn't mean you accept the first answer. You kind of, it's like getting to learn the way I've figured it out. It's like getting to learn a new cell phone. Like you get the answer, and some of it might look really stupid. You're like, no, no, what about this? That looks ridiculous. Change this, add that. What else am I missing? And the more you prompt it, the more you kind of beat it down, the more refined the answers kind of get, and you'll arrive there. So I don't the people that say there's specific prompts that solve all your problems, I don't really believe that. You just have to ask and keep asking questions. Does that make sense, Frank?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah, no
think I
problem.
could have that back and forth. I've
Yeah.
tried that a little bit. Just got to do more of it.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
that all.
I'm getting lazier. I don't even type anymore. I just put the talking thing on and I just talk to it. And then it records everything, it dictates. And I'm like, oh, okay. And if
You
I'm
just
really
have
lazy, I'll get it to talk back to me. So I don't have to read it.
you just
Got
have
it. Got to learn to play with it.
you
Yeah.
just have to be careful not to put personal information when you're talking, like put it into the chat GPT because it's all shared, right? So
Mm,
Yeah.
just don't want to put
right.
personal information in there.
Yeah, I try, but I think it knows who you are and where you live, no matter what.
I know. But I mean, like as a realtor, right? I wouldn't put my client's information.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
Of course, yeah.
Frank is at, this and this address, and he wants to sell his house for like just stuff like that. I wouldn't, I would just put client, right? But
Uh,
yeah,
Absolutely. Another trick is now some of the AIs are allowing you to build entire PowerPoint presentations,
yes, yeah.
and like this was done on AI.
Oh wow.
So Frank, I literally just talked to it. So what I did was, look, here's the points Joanne wants me to cover.
Yeah,
Break down each point into 5 questions to get all the data out of my head. And then I want you to ask me what story I have from my experience will relate to each point. Like, okay, answer all the questions. I literally told the computer a story and it wrote it.
yeah,
Then I took it from one AI to another AI and I'm like, put this into slides and then write me the notes.
yeah. Yeah, I kind of do that. I marry it with with my own input, but I also get a lot of it from the AI as well, and then I tweak it and just to suit but it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is a tool, and it's what it's doing, Frank, and just for fun now, like it's collapsing time. So what would have took me 3 hours now takes me
right.
one. It's still all of my content. It just assembled it together for me. It would be like pushing a button on your stove, and it's going to make you a lasagna in 5 minutes. You're just collapsing time, right? And it's fantastic. Anyway,
Got to play with it, and I'll figure it out.
Ken
yes.
has a question here. It's a bit of a long one. So I'll just read it. So Ken's asking how much costs are required to set up a JV deal, excluding the procurement, closing, reno cost of a given deal. Just start with just startup admin costs. Do they vary by size of the deal? This might include established JV agreement, legal review of agreement. And is this the responsibility of each partner individually to protect themselves? Any extra insurance? Like it's in the chat if you want to look at it. Are there any
Yeah, that,
financing
uh,
sources typically?
I don't see that question. Was it just sent to you? Oh, no, no, no. Never mind. Never mind. I see it here. How much costs are required to set up a JV deal, excluding the, yeah, okay. So it depends on the lawyer. Like I remember our first JV agreement, it was like 1,500 bucks, right? To produce the template and then modify the template for our use. And then I had the agreement I could reuse every time. So it wasn't really outrageous. I mean, could it be
Okay, I
more?
get it. I get it. This is, 800, 1,500, 2,000. It's not like $10,000 to set this
Well,
stuff up.
listen, I mean, it depends what lawyer you're talking to and the nature of
And
the
the
deal. If
size
it's
of the
a
deal, right? Yeah, yeah,
the
okay.
size of the deal, right? Yeah. Uh, well, this might include establishing protect themselves. Any extra insurance? Like no, I don't think so. Like insurance you have to pay for? No. Are there any extra finance sourcing costs typically for the JV agreement?
Yeah, yeah. If you're doing a partnership deal, does that imply that you're going to have any kind of extra financing costs as opposed to just doing it as an individual?
Oh,
There's not.
no, no, no.
Okay. I think you kind of answered it. It's not really, you got to establish the JV agreement, and that could be little, could be small. $1,500 and 3 hours of discussions with your partner might be enough, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for smaller stuff like that, yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated at all. Actually, simplicity is better. Like as long as you have
Yeah,
the conversation, that's the important stuff.
yeah.
What else did you say, Ken? Oh, Notebook
I'm,
LM.
I'm
Yeah,
just
nope.
asking because I've done lots of individual deals, but never a JV.
Yeah, no problem. Notebook LM will do the PowerPoints.
Yeah, it's a Google, right?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes,
Amazing.
yes. Yeah. How important is the ILA clause in agreements in your opinion? Yeah, hey, Glenn, that's a good one. So ILA is independent legal advice.
Oh,
Uh, so you might say, like, if you're buying a duplex, you're going to use one lawyer to close the deal, lawyer A, and then lawyer A might help you draft the agreement. But if lawyer A is helping you draft the agreement, the other partner might want to contact lawyer B independently
Yeah.
and have a completely independent legal review. I would never say no if one of my investors wanted to do that. Um, like I'm not trying to take advantage of them from the start, but if they want to go through that extra layer of due diligence, I mean, all the power to them, right? Might be a waste of time, but for them, if it gives them the peace of
Peace of
mind they
mind.
need to do the deal, yeah, like I mean, why not? But I don't think it's vital, but in the right circumstance, it might be necessary. That's actually a really good question. Yeah. Anything
excellent.
else?
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I really
No, no
appreciate
problem.
the time out because I know you're a busy guy, and that was a great presentation and lots of good nuggets in there.
Yeah,
And
no problem. Thanks for having me. Take care. See everyone. Ciao, ciao.
thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.